Sam Haskell, executive producer of Coda Many Colors, the recent Dolly Parton TV movie. How in the world did you convince Dolly to give up one of her most treasured stories?
Well, Chris, it's really very easy. Dolly and I are very good friends, and we have been very good friends for 30 years. And when she found out that I was producing back in Hollywood at Warner Brothers, she came to see me in Oxford, Mississippi. And she said, I've got some ideas I want to talk to you about. And we noodled around on those ideas for about a year. And then we decided it might be interesting to go back into a genre that had sort of disappeared in the commercial big four networks, which is the TV movie area. And if we could take some of her songs and stories from her life or her hit songs and make TV movies out of them, it might be an interesting way to go. We had a mutual friend named Robert Greenblatt, who was chairman of NBC, and we had lunch with him, and he bought it at the table with the condition that Coda Many Colors be the first one that we do. Dolly and I had already talked about it, and we had already decided that we wanted to ask him for Coda Many Colors to be the first one. So it was kismet. It worked out perfectly. And as of a year ago now, we started the script, casting, pre-production, production, post-production, and delivered the movie right after Thanksgiving. It aired on December 10th to incredible ratings and reviews and was a blessing to us all.
This could be the kind of movie that I could envision this being on NBC every Christmas, couldn't you?
Well, I think they planned that because they aired it 2 weeks later on Christmas night, and the ratings were as good as what they get with It's a Wonderful Life. So I think we may have a perennial on our hands.
To me, as you were putting this whole thing together, I would think this is her as a young girl. I would think the hardest single thing was to find the right young actress.
Chris, it's absolutely true. We looked at over 200 little girls, and there was something wonderful about each one of them, but none of them had everything until Olivia Allen Lynn walked in the room. And when I saw her, I just thought to myself, oh, dear Lord in heaven, let her be able to act. And when I saw that she could act, I said, okay, God, now I need to make sure she can sing. And when I heard that she could sing, I called Dolly and I said, I think we found her. And we sent Dolly a video cassette of her audition, and it made Dolly cry. And I knew that we had found little Dolly Parton.
I don't know what she's like in real life other than when we all met at that party recently, but she seems like she's a spitfire, just probably like Dolly was.
She is a force of nature, and she is exactly like Dolly was. And Dolly has often said that she makes her look real good, but I have a feeling they're almost identical twins at that same age. And Dolly will always know, and this child will always know, that Dolly's life at this particular time will not only be honored, but will be preserved for all eternity as the childhood story of one of America's great pop icons.
And what about the production itself? Where did you shoot it? What kind of difficulties and all of that around the production itself?
Well, there are always difficulties, as you know, and as your viewers know, in production, especially when you go out of the Los Angeles area. You know, I sit in an office on a studio that has just hundreds of sound stages and sets and streets that can be converted. And when you have to create a period of time like 60 years ago in 1955, you have to go to a place that already has a lot of that. And we knew that because of the cost of these movies that we would need to find a state that had a really good incentive program and rebates. And Georgia was just that. So once we had decided on Georgia, we had to go find a location. And I had put our line producer, Hudson Hickman, to task to go find the Dolly Parton cabin, barn, school, and church. And we came to this place called the Gaither Plantation outside of Covington, Georgia. And the school, the barn, the cabin, and the church were all within, 50 yards of each other, but divided by trees and forest, so that any one set that we would be shooting on would be masked from showing the other sets. And we never had to change locations in the first 3 weeks of the shoot, which was not only a productive thing financially, but creatively, because it allowed us to create our little village right there, and we could have several things going simultaneously. We did all our interiors on a sound stage in Covington, where we built our sets inside, and we did it just in the nick of time because we had a major rainstorm hit us down there, and it just made it all work perfectly.
The story itself and the way the whole thing is presented, I mean, it's quite happy, lots of music, but also quite sad at times. How did you all work on that blend to make sure that it was going to be something people would enjoy?
Well, I think that it's a slice of life, and I don't think there's any life that goes without some sort of sadness or problem. And I've often said, I do a lot of lectures around the country on character and integrity in life in general. And if someone tells you they have a perfect life, they're probably lying. And I think that Dolly's no exception to that. She came from poverty. She came from a tiny little cabin that's probably not much bigger than the room you're sitting in or the room I'm sitting in my office. And in that tiny little cabin were a mama and a daddy and a dozen siblings, children. And the love that I think they had brought them through the tragedies. And when Dolly shared the story of what motivated her mother to make that coat of many colors, the loss of that baby, we knew that we had to put that into the movie to show where the family had to come after the devastation of that loss and how they rebuilt through their character, their integrity, their strength and faith in God, and their love for each other. The only way to show that is to show it in contrast to that incredible tragedy of the loss of a baby. And then, of course, when you add in the fact that after she had this beautiful coat, she was bullied for having this coat, we had another issue to deal with. And bullying is an issue that is still a hot button today. It was a hot button 60 years ago, and it's a hot button today. Kids are not necessarily kind to each other all the time. And that was another part of the realness of her life that she had to deal with. And I think as an example for kids today to think Dolly Parton was bullied, oh my goodness, then maybe it will teach something to them as well about the strength and the friendship through her friend Judy Ogle that pulled her through that. And then, of course, the overriding emotion of the love from the family. And the Parton family was one full of lots of love. And while they may have been poor in material things, they were very rich in love.
You mentioned church. It's rare that you see in any major project, church, religion, Christianity, gospel music, all in something, mass produced. Was there any pushback from the network at all on that?
No, NBC was so in tune with what we were doing. And I'd had private conversations with Robert Greenblatt at NBC and Quinn Taylor and Jen Salke, the executives on this project. And we all discussed the fact that at this particular time in America, there are socioeconomic issues. There are obviously political issues. And people are looking for something positive to hold on to. And what better way to do that than to bring faith to them and family to them and open it up in a very organic way. I think the reason it worked is because we weren't preaching. We were just living it. And we lived it because that's the way Dolly and her family lived it. And it was very real and touchable. And it became a part of what everyone is feeling right now. And in looking for something positive to hang on to, Coat of Many Colors was just that.
Great cast overall, not just Olivia. And by the way, you and I are from neighboring cities in Mississippi, so thank you for getting the Southern accents right. That doesn't always happen.
That was very important to me, Chris, and I agree with you. So many times people have a vision of what a Southern accent is, and it's usually some over-the-top fake drawl, and it had to be real, and I made sure it was real, and I met with the dialect coaches and with the children and their parents, and little Allie's mother would come up to me and ask me for pronunciations on certain words that little Allie would have to say, and I would give it to her. And then, of course, when you do your looping after the movie is produced, there are certain things that can be fixed in looping, but the accents were of the utmost importance to me, and it also added to the authenticity.
In this cast, one that surprised me that had a major role, but also just did a great job was Jennifer Nettles, who we all know from her country music background, but I didn't know she could act this well.
None of us knew she could act this well. It had been an idea offered to us by Bob Greenblatt to think about it because he had seen her in the Broadway musical Chicago in New York. And as a great singer, emoting great emotion, we just wondered if she might be able to act. And so she made a little tape for us and took the scene where she explained to Dolly that she was making her the coat. And she sent that to us. And when Dolly saw it, she said, "My goodness, that's my mother." And we called Jennifer and said, "We want you." And we put the deal together, put her on the set. This was her first real acting job. And she was magnificent.
And Dolly herself, how much did she come to the set? How much time did she spend there?
Well, Dolly's very busy, as you can only imagine, and she's always recording and writing and doing her tours and her appearances. So she was not able to come to the set, but I sent her dailies every day, and she was involved every step of the way in the casting and in the development of the script, and then, of course, in the promotion afterwards. But she left the production up to me and my team, and one of the greatest compliments I could have ever gotten in my life, other than my wife saying, "Yes, I'll marry you," is Dolly Parton falling into my arms after she saw the whole movie for the first time, crying and telling me it was the most incredible thing she's ever seen. And that let me know that I had done my job well.
Well, I don't think she would have been hesitant to speak up if she was not happy with something.
No, she wouldn't. And I sent her dailies every day, so she knew exactly what each actor was doing. I'll tell you two other gentlemen who were incredible in our cast. Ricky Schroeder, who had been one of my clients when I was at the William Morris Agency years ago when he was a little boy, and he had done The Champ with John Voight, and then we put him in a series called Silver Spoons. And then Gerald McCraney, who's been my friend for almost 35 years, who played the grandfather. And they both brought in terrific performances and were amazing.
Yeah, Ricky, I mean, that role, it's hard to be, and not that he's a bad guy, but it's hard to be sort of the heavy in any project, and he really pulls that off.
I think he walked a real fine line there and did it brilliantly. And to have been a man struggling with his faith, as so many around the world do, he was exemplary in showing what you go through in the determination not to accept, but to finally agree that this is what I need to do. And through the love of his wife, she brought him to it. And he walked across that threshold and came into that church for the first time. And it was just a remarkably emotional moment. And our writer, Pam Long, pulled that together beautifully as well. And of course, with actors like Ricky and Jennifer, that scene is one of the key scenes in the transition of his faith and his character at that moment in the movie.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Gerald McCraney too. He's always been one of my favorites. And there's certain kinds of actors like him, when you see their name attached to a project, you know, well, even if I don't like the rest of this, I know I'm going to like that piece of it.
Right. And I think that it added some credibility to our movie to have an actor as fine as Gerald McCraney. But all of our actors did a great job. All the little actors who played the brothers and sisters of Dolly. My daughter, Mary Lane, played the teacher, Miss Moody, and we couldn't have been prouder of her. She just loved every minute of it. And the whole cast came together. Dolly's sister, Stella, her grown sister, Stella, played Mrs. Bass at the mercantile store. And we just had a blessed project from the very beginning until the very end.
When she was on screen, I had not really looked at the credit list or the cast list. When she started to speak, I thought, oh, that's got to be a part in real life.
Well, you were right. You were right.
What about the family itself? Beyond the two we've mentioned, Stella and Dolly, what did the rest of the family have to say once they saw it?
Well, it's a very good question, my friend, because it was the first thing that I asked Dolly after she screened it for them all. She brought them all together to Dollywood for Christmas, and she screened the movie for them. And she said to a person, they all loved it. They thought that their characters had been portrayed perfectly. They loved the look of the actors chosen for each one. And Dolly was very involved in the casting of the brothers and sisters, right down to the hair and eye color, the height, everything. And we had to fit certain criteria before she would approve them. And I think our cast was wonderful.
Well, you're with us today because this is our Emmy contender season, and we really feel like this could be a strong contender. It's not like anything else in that TV movie category. And when you stand out like that and you have great ratings and it's a quality product, those can all add up to maybe some really good nominations for you and your team.
Well, you're very kind, Chris, and we certainly hope so. We think the movie was a landmark movie. It brought attention back to this genre of television. But I also want to mention our director, Stephen Herrick, who did an incredible job, our production designer, Thomas Valentine, our costumer, Michael Boyd. This was a project that I often liken to the children's story Stone Soup, where you have some soldiers in the Revolutionary War mixing a kettle over a tripod and fire with a stone and some water, and people in the town saying, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're making stone soup. It's very delicious." Well, all you've got there is a rock. And they say, "Well, you'll see." And sooner or later, each member of the town brings out all they have. Maybe it's a handful of beans or a little piece of chicken or beef or a carrot or a piece of celery. And when everyone puts the best they have into the pot, they stir up a stew that feeds the entire village. Well, I pushed and encouraged every single one of the 300 people involved in making Coat of Many Colors to put the best that they had into the pot. And we were able to stir up some entertainment that will entertain and touch the world.
And now where do you go from here? Dolly now trusts you. Are you going to work on some more of her stories and song material?
Yes, we are. We have a deal at NBC for 4 movies, and they will be based on her hit songs. And we are also talking about doing a sequel to Coat of Many Colors, if we can pull everything together to do that. And Jolene is one of the songs that we're developing, and The Seeker is one of the songs that we're developing as a movie. Just a lot of exciting things coming up in the future. And the fact that Coat of Many Colors did so well tells the audience that Dolly and Sam and Pam and Steve and Hudson and our entire team are bringing them something special, and they know that it will be quality, and I believe that they'll follow us to the next one as well.
Well, good luck with everything. You've already got a big hit on your hands. Let's see if we can turn into some award nominations down the road.
We would love that, Chris, and thank you so much for your support.